If they found me in Damien Rousseau's penthouse at 2:13 in the morning, I wouldn't live long enough to explain how I got there. That was my first clear thought as I stood barefoot on imported marble, staring at the dark stain on my sleeve that wasn't mine, listening to the slow, measured silence of a man who owned half the city and trusted almost no one in it. Damien stood across from me in a black dress shirt with the sleeves rolled once at the wrist, as if even panic had to obey his rules. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The entire room seemed to hold its breath for him. Behind him, Manhattan glittered through 40-foot windows like a field of cold stars, all money and glass and distance. I had spent most of my life serving people who lived above my pay grade, but I'd never been this high up, and I'd never felt so close to falling. "Look at me, Claire," he said, and I hated that my body listened before my pride did. His eyes were steady, storm-dark, impossible to read unless you looked too long, and I had already made that mistake earlier tonight. "Did anyone see you come up here?" I tried to answer, but my throat was too tight. My pulse had been sprinting for what felt like hours, ever since the elevator doors opened onto his private floor, and I realized this wasn't the kind of place people simply left when they felt uncomfortable. I shook my head once. No. It came out smaller than I wanted. His jaw tightened, just slightly, and he crossed the room with the kind of controlled speed that made every instinct in me go still. Damien Rousseau never seemed rushed. Not in the hotel ballroom downstairs when senators laughed too loudly at weak jokes. Not when men in tailored suits moved aside before he even reached them. Not when his name passed from mouth to mouth in quiet, careful tones, like people were afraid of chipping a tooth on it. And definitely not now, when I was standing in his penthouse after midnight with someone else's trouble on my clothes and his world closing around me like a locked door. "Then listen carefully," he said. He stopped close enough for me to catch the clean scent of cedar and expensive soap, close enough to notice the faint shadow of exhaustion under his eyes. "From this moment on, you do exactly what I say." "I don't belong here," I whispered. It was the wrong thing to say. I knew it the second the words left my mouth because something changed in his expression, not anger exactly, something deeper, older, almost tired. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "You never did." A tremor moved through me, not from fear alone, but from the terrible feeling that he was talking about more than the penthouse, more than tonight. As if he had been trying not to notice me from the moment I spilled champagne near his table 6 hours earlier. From the moment I looked up and found him already watching me like he recognized a danger no one else could see. I should start at the beginning. I should tell you that 36 hours ago, I was just Claire Bennett, 24 years old, working double shifts, carrying floral arrangements into rooms I could never afford, trying to save my mother's house one invoice at a time. I should tell you that men like Damien Rousseau existed in a separate universe from women like me. I should tell you I knew better than to step into his orbit. But the truth is, the first time he looked at me, something in the room shifted. And by the end of that night, the most dangerous man in New York was telling me to stay very still while he figured out how to keep me alive. Damien moved first, not toward the door, but toward the control panel hidden beside a wall of smoked glass. With one quiet tap, the city vanished behind steel shutters that slid into place without a sound. Manhattan disappeared. The lights, the skyline, the illusion that I could still run if I wanted to. I stared at the sealed windows and felt something cold settle low in my stomach. "Why did you do that?" I asked. My voice sounded thin in the enormous room. "Because anyone watching this floor now sees nothing," he said. "And tonight, nothing is safer than you." That answer should have made me feel protected. It did not. It made me feel claimed. Damien turned back to me, his expression unreadable, all control and expensive restraint. But there was tension in the way he held his shoulders, like the night had gone off script, and he was rewriting it in real time. "Sit down," he said. "I am fine." "Claire." He only said my name once, but somehow it landed like a command and a warning at the same time. I hated that I listened. I lowered myself onto the edge of a cream-colored sofa that probably cost more than my mother owed on 3 months of mortgage payments. My hands would not stop shaking. The stain on my sleeve had started to dry. A dark reminder that the last 20 minutes were real, that the panic on the service elevator had not been some stress dream brought on by too much coffee and too little sleep. Damien crossed to a bar made of black stone, ignored the crystal decanters lined up like museum pieces, and instead poured a glass of water. When he handed it to me, his fingers brushed mine for half a second. Warm, steady, human. That was the most dangerous thing about him. Not the tailored black suit he had shed somewhere between the ballroom and the penthouse. Not the men who nodded and disappeared the second he looked at them. Not even the reputation that followed him through every room like a second shadow. It was the fact that, up close, he did not feel like a monster. He felt like a man trying very hard to be one. Drink, he said. I did. My throat hurt. My whole body felt wound too tight, like one wrong word could split me open. Now tell me exactly what happened after you left the ballroom. I closed my eyes for 1 second, and the night came back sharp and bright. The charity gala had still been in full swing when I slipped through the staff corridor with an empty silver tray balanced against my hip. Music drifted through the walls, soft strings and expensive laughter. My feet ached. My smile had gone numb around hour 6. I had been counting centerpieces and calculating tips in my head, trying to decide whether I could send an extra $300 to my mother before the bank posted another warning on her front door. Then I heard voices near the private elevator. 2 men. Low. Urgent. Not drunk enough to be careless, but not careful enough to realize I was in the alcove changing out wilted roses. I did not understand every word. I only caught fragments. Thursday. Warehouse. Ledger. Rousseau. Then one of them said, very clearly, once he signs, the girl becomes leverage. I opened my eyes so fast the room tilted. Damien was watching me without blinking. They were talking about me? I asked. His silence was answer enough. A terrible heat climbed up my neck. I did not even know your name until tonight. They did. He took the empty glass from my hand and set it aside. That means someone has been paying attention to you for longer than I have. I should have felt relieved by the honesty. Instead, every nerve in my body went rigid. Longer than you have. The corner of his mouth shifted, but it was not a smile. Do not ask questions you are not ready to hear answered, Claire. I stood too quickly. No. You do not get to say things like that, and then shut me out. I am here because of your world. Because of your enemies. Because somehow I got dragged into something I never agreed to. My voice cracked on the last word, and I hated that too. Damien did not move. He just looked at me with those dark, impossible eyes and said, very softly, You think I do not know that? For the first time since I stepped into the penthouse, something in his composure slipped. Not much. Just enough to let me see the strain underneath. Enough to make me realize this was not only dangerous for me. Somehow, in a way I did not yet understand, I was the one thing in the room he had not planned for. The silence after his last sentence stretched, so thin it felt dangerous. I stood in the center of Damien Rousseau's penthouse with my pulse beating too hard and too fast, trying to decide which part of this night scared me more. The men downstairs who had spoken about me like I was a bargaining chip, or the man in front of me, who looked as if he could stop the entire city from turning if he wanted to, and still seemed unsettled by my presence in his home. Then tell me what I am supposed to do, I said. Because I cannot stand here while everyone else knows the rules except me. Damien held my gaze for a long moment, and I had the strange, disorienting feeling that he was weighing 2 outcomes at once. One where he told me the truth. One where he lied for my own good. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before, quieter, which somehow made it harder to ignore. Tonight, you stay here. I let out a short breath that sounded almost like a laugh, except there was nothing funny in it. That is not a plan. That is captivity with better furniture. For 1 second, I thought I saw the faintest flicker of approval in his expression, as if I had said exactly what he expected. If I wanted you trapped, Claire, you would know the difference. The words should have sounded threatening. Instead, they landed with the weight of simple fact. That was worse. I wrapped my arms around myself and turned away, letting my eyes move across the room, because looking directly at him for too long felt like stepping too close to a ledge. The penthouse was all clean lines and controlled luxury, black stone, brushed steel, pale rugs soft enough to swallow sound. No family photos. No clutter. No sign that anyone truly lived here except a half-open book on the side table and a glass chest set near the windows, one piece turned on its side like someone had left in the middle of a decision. Nothing in the room matched the man people whispered about downstairs. Nothing in everything. I have to call my mother, I said suddenly. That was the first ordinary thought I had clung to all night. and it hit me so hard my chest tightened. She is going to wake up and panic if I do not answer. Damien's face changed again, not softer exactly, but more focused. He reached into his pocket, pulled out my phone, and held it toward me. I blinked. You took my phone? One of my men found it in the service hallway after you dropped it. Of course they did. I snatched it from his hand and looked down at the dark screen. Screamed before I angled it away. Call her, he said. Tell her you are staying with a co-worker in Midtown because the event ran late. I looked up sharply. You do not get to script my life. No, he said, calm as ever. I am trying to keep it intact. That should not have moved me. It did anyway. I hated that too. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice rough with sleep and worry. I forced mine steady. I lied cleanly, efficiently, with Damien standing 10 feet away listening to every word and saying nothing. When the call ended, I held the phone against my chest for a second longer than necessary. Thank you, I said before I could stop myself. Damien's eyes flicked to mine. Do not thank me yet. A chill worked down my spine. What does that mean? He glanced toward the sealed windows, then toward the private elevator at the far end of the room. Somewhere beyond the quiet walls, a soft chime sounded. Not loud, not urgent, somehow worse because of it. Damien's whole body went still, every line of him sharpening at once. It means, he said, already moving. Someone just came upstairs who was not invited. The soft chime echoed once, and then disappeared into the kind of silence only expensive buildings could afford. Damien reached the private elevator before I could process what was happening, his movements sharp now, stripped of the controlled ease he had worn all night like a second suit. He did not look panicked. Men like Damien probably did not panic. But for the first time since I met him, he looked prepared for something he had hoped not to see. He pressed 2 fingers to a panel beside the elevator, entered a code too quickly for me to follow, and then turned back to me. Go to the hallway on your left, he said. Second door. Lock it behind you. No. The word came out before I could stop it. His eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in disbelief that I was still arguing with him. Claire, you keep telling me to trust you while hiding everything that matters. I am done moving blind. I hated that my voice shook at the edges, but I held his gaze anyway. The elevator numbers glowed above the brushed steel doors, climbing steadily toward us. 28, 29, 30. Damien took 2 steps toward me, and the room seemed to contract around the distance he erased. This is not the moment to prove you are brave. Maybe I am not trying to prove that. He stopped close enough that I could see the tension in his jaw, the faint pulse beating once at the base of his throat. Then what are you trying to prove? I swallowed. The truth came out before pride could stop it. That I am not one more thing for you to move around like furniture. Something changed in his face. It was small, quick, but I saw it. Not irritation, not even surprise. Something almost like regret. The elevator chimed again. This time the sound cut straight through me. Damien looked at the doors, then back at me, and whatever choice he had been trying to avoid vanished from his expression. Stay behind me, he said. The doors slid open. A man stepped out in a charcoal suit with silver at his temples and a posture so polished it felt rehearsed. He looked to be in his late 50s, maybe early 60s, with the kind of face that probably smiled easily in boardrooms and never for free. He paused when he saw me. His eyes flicked over the stain on my sleeve, then moved to Damien with cool, precise interest. So it is true, he said. His voice was smooth, East Coast old money wrapped around something harder underneath. You brought her upstairs. Damien did not answer right away. He stood half a step in front of me, not touching me, not acknowledging the fact that he was shielding me, which somehow made the gesture feel even more deliberate. You should not be here, Victor. The older man smiled faintly, but it never reached his eyes. I could say the same about your guest. My spine straightened on instinct. I'm standing right here. Victor turned his attention to me fully then, and the smile he gave me was refined enough to be mistaken for kindness by someone less tired, less cornered. Claire Bennett, he said, you have had a very unusual evening. The blood in my veins seemed to cool all at once. How do you know my name? That is not the question you should ask. Damien's voice dropped a degree. Enough. Victor did not look away from me. The better. Question is whether you know who your mother used to work for before she moved you to Connecticut and changed both your lives. Every thought in my head stopped. My mother's house. Her unpaid mortgage. The way she always shut down whenever I asked about the years before my father died. The stack of sealed documents she kept in the back of her closet like the past could be folded small enough to ignore. What are you talking about? I whispered. Victor's gaze slid back to Damien. You did not tell her. I was going to. No, Victor said, almost gently. You were going to do what you always do. Delay the truth until it becomes a weapon in someone else's hands. Damien's silence felt louder than shouting. I looked at him then, really looked, and for the first time all night I saw something close to defeat in the man who had seemed impossible to shake. It hit me low and hard, that whatever secret had just stepped off that elevator was bigger than me overhearing the wrong conversation at a gala. Bigger than one dangerous night. Damien, I said, and my voice barely sounded like mine. What does he mean my mother used to work for you? The question landed in the room like broken glass, small and sharp and impossible to ignore. Victor said nothing. He did not need to. The damage was already done. I looked at Damien and waited for him to deny it, to tell me this was some cruel manipulation designed to make me easier to control. He did not. His silence was not evasive this time. It was heavier than that. Older. As if the truth had been sitting between us all night, waiting for someone else to drag it into the light. She did not work for me, Damien said at last. His voice was flat, controlled, but I heard the strain underneath it now. She worked for my father. I stared at him. The distinction should have mattered. Right then, it did not. That is supposed to make me feel better? No. Just one word. Honest. Infuriating. Victor adjusted the cuff of his suit with elegant precision, as if families unraveling in penthouses after midnight was not even mildly inconvenient. Your mother was a bookkeeper, he said, looking at me again. Very good with numbers. Very discreet. For a time, she handled financial records connected to businesses that did not officially exist. I felt the room tilt a little. My mother worked part-time at a library. She paid bills and labeled envelopes. She wore the same winter coat for 8 years because she said replacing a perfectly good one was wasteful. She hated secrets so much she could not even watch crime shows without getting anxious. That woman did not belong anywhere near men like Damien Rousseau. You are lying. Victor's expression did not change. I rarely bother. Damien stepped in before I could answer. That is enough, Victor. It is not enough. Not anymore. Victor's voice sharpened for the first time, the polished civility cracking just enough to show the steel underneath. You brought her here, which means the situation has already collapsed. She was overheard downstairs. Names were said. Assumptions were made. If she leaves this floor ignorant, she becomes vulnerable. If she stays ignorant, she becomes useful to the wrong people. Useful. I hated that word. I hated how easily men like them used it, like people were objects to be handled and traded and filed away. Stop talking about me like I am not standing here. This time my voice did not shake. Maybe shock had burned all the fear out of it. Victor inclined his head slightly. Then stand and listen. Damien's gaze cut to mine, dark and unreadable. Claire, 5 years ago your mother disappeared from a set of records she should not have been able to leave. She took nothing. She exposed nothing. She simply vanished. My father let it happen because someone inside the organization arranged it. The edges of my vision tightened. Who? He held my gaze. I did. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. The room did not make sense after that. The marble, the steel, the sealed windows. Damien standing a few feet away looking like a man built out of control and silence. You helped her? I asked. He nodded once. She had a child. She wanted out. My father was still alive then, and leaving was not something people requested twice. So I changed the books, buried the trail, and moved her name through 3 shell companies until it disappeared. My hand went to my mouth before I could stop it. Not because the confession sounded cruel. Because it sounded careful. Thought out. Protective in a way I did not know what to do with. Victor watched me with the patience of someone who already understood what part would hurt the most. Your mother was not the only one who left that year, he said. A federal prosecutor began building a case soon after. Quietly. Methodically. Names, accounts, properties. Enough to bring down half the Rousseau network. A chill moved through me. What does that have to do with me? Neither of them answered fast enough. And in the silence, I knew. I knew before Damien said it. I knew because my mother had gone pale last fall when a certain name came on the local news. I knew because she had once told me, for no reason I understood at the time, That there were some men in this city I should never let look at me for too long. Damien's voice was almost too quiet to hear. The prosecutor building that case was your father. My father. For a moment the words meant nothing. They drifted through the penthouse like smoke, unreal and impossible to hold. My father had been dead for 11 years. In my mind he still lived in fragments. A navy overcoat hanging by the front door, black coffee left half-finished on Sunday mornings, a tired smile across the kitchen table when I showed him a report card he always said he knew would be good. He was not a prosecutor. He was not part of a secret war with men like Damien Rousseau. He was my father. Ordinary. Safe. Gone. No, I said, and the word came out small, almost embarrassed by how badly I needed it to be true. No, he worked in compliance. He traveled. He did corporate investigations. Victor looked at Damien, not at me, as if this part belonged to him. Damien did not move. That was the cover he used at home. The room narrowed around me. You do not get to tell me who my father was. Claire. No. I stepped back before I realized I was moving. My shoulder brushed the edge of the sofa, grounding me for half a second, but not enough. You do not get to take every normal thing I ever had and turn it into one more secret. Damien's expression did not harden. That would have been easier. Instead, something in his face seemed to give, just slightly. Like he had expected my anger and still believed he deserved worse. I am not trying to take him from you, he said quietly. I am trying to explain why tonight happened. I laughed once, sharp and breathless. By telling me my mother lied to me for years, my father had another life. And somehow I ended up in the middle of a war I did not even know existed. Victor folded his hands behind his back. Not somehow. I turned on him so fast my pulse jumped into my throat. Then explain it. He did, in that same calm, polished voice that made every word sound final. My father had spent years building a quiet case against financial networks connected to the Rousseau organization. Not loud arrests. Not headlines. Numbers. Shell companies. Property chains. Donations routed through charities and investment groups. My mother had been useful because she knew where records disappeared. Damien had been useful because he knew how his father hid them. When my parents left, they did not just disappear for safety. They disappeared with enough information to make powerful people nervous for a very long time. Then why were we not running forever? I asked. Why did we stop in Connecticut? Why did my mother let me have a normal life if any of this was real? Damien answered before Victor could. Because the case died with your father. I looked at him. Really looked. There was no triumph in his voice. No cruelty. Only something grim and tired. After he died, the people still loyal to my father assumed the danger was over. Your mother was left alone because they believed the records were gone and the witness who understood them was dead. My heart thudded once, hard enough to hurt. And were they gone? A pause. Too long. Damien's silence gave him away before his words did. Not all of them. The air left my lungs in a rush. My mother still has them. We do not know that, he said. Victor gave the slightest tilt of his head. We know enough. I thought of the locked box in my mother's closet. The one she never mentioned. The one she moved every time we changed apartments when I was little, treating it with more care than jewelry, more care than photos. I had always assumed it held old letters or bills or the kind of grief adults kept packed away because children asked too many questions. And now someone downstairs thinks I can lead them to those records, I whispered. Damien's gaze held mine. Yes. The truth of it settled over me in layers. The overheard conversation at the gala. The private elevator. The sealed windows. Damien's urgency the second he saw me step into his world by accident. None of it had been random. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the perfect climate of the room. So what now? Victor looked toward the elevator. Now the question is whether the people asking about you are working against Damien or from inside his own house. I stared at him. Inside, Damien's jaw tightened. It was the smallest movement, but it changed everything. Because for the first time all night, I saw it clearly. He was not only protecting me from enemies outside these walls. He was trying to protect me from someone much closer. The idea that danger could be living inside Damien's own circle changed the air in the room. Everything I had been holding together with anger and adrenaline shifted into something colder, sharper. Fear with a face. Fear with elevator access. I looked from Victor to Damien and saw no denial in either of them. That scared me more than anything else they had said tonight. Who? I asked. Tell me who it is. Damien's gaze moved briefly to Victor, then back to me. If I knew for certain, they would not still be standing. The answer should have sounded cruel. Instead, it sounded exhausted. Like betrayal was not a possibility to him anymore. Like it was a rhythm he had learned to live with. Victor crossed the room slowly, not toward us, but toward the chests set by the windows. He righted the fallen piece with one careful hand. There are 3 people with enough access to know you were brought upstairs, he said. One handles internal operations. One handles security rotations. One has been with the Rousseau family longer than Damien has been alive. I stared at him. And you are telling me this like I should somehow know what to do with it. No, Damien said quietly. He is telling you because if one of them already suspects who your mother is, the window to protect her is closing. My mother. The word snapped. Everything back into focus. The penthouse. The secrets. My father. None of it mattered more than that. She was alone in a small white house outside Hartford with a stubborn front porch light and a habit of pretending everything was fine long after it stopped being true. I reached for my phone again. Damien saw it and shook his head once. Do not call her. I froze. Excuse me. If someone is watching your movements, a call at 2:30 in the morning after you vanished from a gala could send them straight to her. So I do nothing? You let me move first. I looked at him, and for a second I forgot how tired I was. Forgot how frightened. He stood there in the middle of that silent, immaculate room like the only person not allowed to fall apart. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were not. Not anymore. There was too much in them now. Pressure. Calculation. Something that looked dangerously close to guilt. You do not get to decide everything, I said, but there was less fire in it than before. More ache. Damien took one step closer. I know. His voice dropped. That is not what this is. Then what is it? The question came out rawer than I intended. Victor turned away then, either out of tact or strategy, and suddenly it felt like the room had narrowed to only the 2 of us. Damien's expression changed in a way I could not have explained if someone had asked. It softened without becoming weak. Broke without losing control. This, he said, is me trying to keep the only daughter of the man who almost destroyed my family from being destroyed by what is left of it. The words hit hard because they should have pushed me away. Instead, they landed somewhere deeper. In the place that had noticed the way he stood between me and every door. The place that remembered he had helped my mother disappear years before he had any reason to care what happened to me. Why? I whispered. I do not know whether I meant why help her, why help me, or why look at me the way he had been looking at me since the ballroom. Maybe all 3. Damien held my gaze long enough that the silence itself began to feel like an answer. Then he said, because. I knew who you were the moment I saw your face. My breath caught. What? Not your name, he said quickly. Not then, but your face. He looked away for the first time all night, just briefly, as if the memory cost him something. You have your father's eyes. The room went still. My father's eyes. Blue-gray, tired at the edges. Kind even when he was worried. I had heard that all my life from neighbors, teachers, distant relatives who thought they were comforting me by saying I carried part of him forward. But hearing it from Damien felt different. Too intimate. Too impossible. You recognized me because of a man who spent years trying to bring down your family. Yes. And you still brought me here. Yes. There was no hesitation. No apology. Just truth. My pulse stumbled over itself. That does not make any sense. No, Damien said, and for the first time, something close to a real smile touched his mouth, brief and bitter and almost sad. It does not. Before I could answer, his phone lit up on the black stone table behind him. He glanced at the screen, and whatever small softness had reached him vanished instantly. He picked it up, listened for 3 seconds, and every line of his body went rigid. They are already in Connecticut, he said. And then he looked straight at me. Claire, your mother is gone. For 1 second, the words did not register. Gone was too simple a word for the kind of fear that hit me. Gone was a missed train. A dead phone battery. A woman stepping out for groceries and forgetting the time. It was not my mother. My mother left notes on the kitchen counter when she went to the pharmacy. She texted me when rain got too heavy on the interstate. She called twice if I missed the first one. She did not just disappear. No, I said, already shaking my head before the denial fully formed. No, that is not possible. Damien ended the call and crossed the room so fast I barely saw him move. Claire, listen to me. Call again. My voice broke on the second word. Call whoever that was, and tell them to check again. He did not reach for me. He stopped close enough to steady me if I fell, but not close enough to make me feel cornered. That restraint nearly undid me. My team got there 8 minutes ago, he said. The front door was locked. The alarm was disarmed with the correct code. Her purse is gone. Her overnight bag is gone. There are no signs of forced entry. Victor's expression had gone still in that particular way older men use when the outcome confirms what they were afraid to say aloud. She left before they arrived, he said. Or she was warned. I turned on him with so much anger I could taste metal at the back of my throat. By who? That, Damien said, sharper than before, is what I intend to find out. I should have trusted that answer. Instead, everything inside me snapped tight with panic. No, we are going there. Damien did not blink. Absolutely not. That is my mother. And if someone used her to draw you out, driving you straight into Connecticut at 3 in the morning would hand them exactly what they want. I do not care what they want. I do. His voice cut through mine with sudden force, not loud, but full enough to stop me cold. The room went silent around us. Even Victor looked away. Damien took one slow breath, reining himself back in. I care, he said again, quieter now, because if this is connected to the leak inside my house, then your mother is not the end of it. You are. I hated that he was right. Hated that reason sounded like cruelty when panic was this loud. My phone was already in my hand. 3 calls to my mother. Straight to voicemail. I called again anyway. Same result. My chest tightened harder with each unanswered ring. I opened our last text thread with fingers that no longer felt fully mine. A photo she had sent yesterday morning of the hydrangeas by the porch. A message reminding me to eat something green once in a while. I stared at those stupid flowers until my vision blurred. She knew. I whispered. Damien's gaze stayed on me. What? She knew something was wrong. I turned the phone toward him, toward Victor, toward no one and everyone. Last week she asked if I was still working events in the city. She never asks that. And yesterday she told me to visit next weekend instead of this one. I thought she was just tired. I thought. The rest dissolved in my throat. Damien looked at the screen, then at me, and something in his face shifted again. Not suspicion. Understanding. She was buying time, he said. The words dropped into place with terrible precision. The locked box in her closet. The sealed documents. The way she had gone pale at certain names on the news. The years of quiet, careful living that I had mistaken for ordinary grief. My mother had not survived by accident. She had survived by seeing danger early and teaching herself how to look calm anyway. Then she left because she thought they were coming, I said. Victor nodded once. Which means she may also have left you something. I looked at him through the haze of panic. What? Instructions. A key. A name. Your mother sounds like a woman who would not run without a contingency plan. Damien's eyes narrowed slightly, already thinking 3 steps ahead. The house. He turned to me. Claire, when you were growing up, did she ever keep anything somewhere she thought you would overlook? Not a closet. Not a safe. Somewhere personal. I wiped at my face with the heel of my hand, angry to find tears there at all. Then, suddenly, I knew. Not because of a secret. Because of something ordinary. The recipe box, I said. Damien went still. What? Blue tin box by the kitchen window. She keeps old recipe cards in it, but she never cooks from half of them. She just keeps them there. My heartbeat kicked hard. When I was a kid, she used to tell me that if anything ever happened and I needed to remember who I was, I should start in the kitchen. I thought she meant because that was where home was. Victor exhaled quietly. Or because that is where she hid what mattered. Damien was already reaching for his phone again when another thought hit me so hard I grabbed the edge of the sofa to stay upright. Wait. He looked at me immediately. What? I could barely force the words out. If my mother ran before your team got there, then she either saw them coming or someone told her to leave. The realization settled over all 3 of us at once. Someone inside Damien's world had not only found her, they had moved faster than Damien himself. And if they had warned her instead of taking her, that meant one impossible thing. The traitor inside his house might not be trying to destroy me. They might be trying to save us both. The possibility did not feel like relief. It felt like the floor shifting under all the rules I had finally started to understand. A traitor who wanted to save us was still a traitor. A warning was still proof that someone inside Damien's world had been moving around us without his consent. And maybe the most unsettling part of all was the look that crossed Damien's face when I said it. Not disbelief, not anger, but recognition. As if some private suspicion had just stepped into the light. You know who it might be? I said. Damien did not answer immediately. He set his phone down with deliberate care, the kind of care men use when they are keeping their hands busy, so they do not reveal too much. Victor watched him in silence for a moment, then gave the smallest nod, like an old argument had just ended without either of them needing to say it aloud. Damien, I said again, and this time my voice carried. Do not do that thing where you decide what I can handle. Not tonight. He looked at me then. Really looked. My wet eyes. The phone still clenched too tightly in my hand. The sleeve with the dark stain from a night that had started with roses and silver trays and ended with half my life breaking open in a penthouse above Manhattan. When he finally spoke, his voice was rougher than I had heard before. Less polished. More honest. There is one person in my house who has disobeyed me for years and lived to do it again. Victor folded his arms. Because she earned the right. I frowned. She. Damien's jaw tightened once. My sister. The word landed strangely. Not because it was shocking that he had a sister, but because nothing else in his home suggested family. No photographs. No warmth left lying around carelessly. Nothing that hinted the man who moved through rooms like a weapon had once belonged to anyone. Her name is Lucia, he said. She handles the charitable foundation attached to our legitimate businesses. Schools, clinics, housing grants. Public-facing work. My father ignored her because he thought compassion made her weak. Something unreadable flickered across his face. He was wrong. I tried to fit that into the Damien I knew, or thought I knew. The Damien who sealed windows with one touch. The Damien who had helped my mother vanish years ago. The Damien who had looked at me in a ballroom like I was both a problem and a prayer. You think she warned my mother? I asked. I think Lucia has her own network, he said. And I think if she learned your name tonight, she would have understood what it meant faster than anyone else in this room. Victor's mouth curved with faint approval, especially if she has been reading the old files you pretend do not exist. Damien did not deny it. My thoughts moved too fast after that. A sister I had never heard of. A mother on the run. A blue recipe box in a kitchen 3 states away. And somewhere under all of it, one impossible detail that would not leave me alone. You said she disobeys you in lives? I said quietly. So you trust her. I trust her to do what she believes is right, Damien said. That is not always the same thing. The answer should have been frustrating. Instead, it made perfect sense. Maybe because I was starting to understand that Damien's world did not divide neatly into good people and dangerous people. Sometimes the most dangerous people were the only ones still choosing decency when it cost them something. Victor checked his watch and looked toward the elevator. If Lucia is involved, time matters more than answers. Someone needs to reach Connecticut before the wrong side realizes your mother did not leave blindly. My grip tightened on the phone. Then I am going. Damien's response came instantly. No. I stepped toward him before fear could drag me backward. You do not get to keep saying that like it ends the conversation. Claire. No. Listen to me. My voice steadied as I spoke, sharpened by the kind of clarity that only comes after too much has already been taken away. This started because people in your world think I can lead them to something my parents died protecting. Maybe they are right. Maybe I do know where to look. But if my mother left me a message, she did not leave it for your men, and she did not leave it for your sister. She left it for me. Something moved in Damien's expression then. Something that looked dangerously close to pride and fear at the same time. He crossed the distance between us slowly, stopping close enough that I could feel the heat of him in the cold, perfect air of the room. If I let you walk into this, he said, there is no version of tonight where I can pretend you are not mine to protect anymore. My breath caught. The words were not a declaration. Not possession. Not even romance. Not in the clean, obvious way stories like to package these things. They were something heavier. More dangerous. A promise he had not meant to speak aloud. I looked up at him and saw the truth of it in his eyes before he said another word. The girl he should have avoided was standing in his penthouse at nearly 3 a.m, and somewhere between the ballroom and now, protecting me had stopped being strategy. It had become personal. Victor cleared his throat softly, a reminder that the world was still burning beyond the room. Damien did not look away from me. You want the truth, Claire? He asked. His voice was barely above a whisper now. Go to Connecticut with me, and there is no coming back to the life you had this morning. My heart beat once, hard and clear, like it had finally chosen a side. I thought of my mother, my father, the box by the kitchen window, the secrets hidden inside ordinary things. Then I met Damien's gaze and understood, with terrifying certainty, that the most dangerous choice in front of me was not whether to go. It was whether I was already too far gone to leave him behind.